Thank you very much for that report. Let's get some more on all of this with the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. Appreciate the chance.
What's your response, Congressman, to news that U.S. troops have now come under fire from ISIS terror forces in and around Mosul, and that some American troops have been injured?
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, this was the plan that President Obama put in place. They're going to have the local Iraqi forces be in the lead, and then we have, several thousand support troops there that are there to help train and advise. But, I mean, the fight is fluid, and they're not going to be able to stay completely out of it. And I do think that the plan basically to roll back ISIS in both Syria and Iraq is working. They've lost an enormous amount of territory, and I think that's important. And I think the role that U.S. troops are playing there has thus far been successful and helpful.
Well, do you want more U.S. troops deployed on the ground, not only in Iraq, but also in Syria?
It doesn't sound like it's necessary at the moment. And again, the main point here is it has to be Iraqi forces or, in Syria, we're working with the Kurds in both Iraq and Syria. It has to be led by the locals. We are simply there to train, advise, and assist. So I don't think we need to send any more troops. I think we have about the right amount. And again, the fight has to be led by the Iraqis.
And you think the Iraqis can get the job done? Because it's been at least 2 years plus that the terrorists, ISIS forces, have controlled the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul. We keep hearing the Iraqis are moving closer and closer to get the job done. They still haven't done it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any guarantee. Now, I mean, Mosul is a very large city. They've taken significant portions of it, and they have been making progress. But look, the lingering problem in Iraq is still the Baghdad government and whether or not it's going to be truly inclusive of the Sunni population. In order to ultimately be successful against ISIS, the Sunnis in Iraq have to feel like they are part of Iraq, like the Baghdad government is supportive of them. I mean, that's what caused ISIS to rise in the first place, was when al-Maliki was the prime minister, and they shut out Sunnis, they threw them in jail, they did not include them in the government, and they made it clear they were going to be a sectarian Shia government. And that's what drove the Sunnis into the arms of ISIS. And if Baghdad doesn't change, they're going to continue to have those struggles. And frankly, there's nothing we can do about it, and nothing we should do about it in terms of sending our troops into a battle that they can't win.
That's a fair point. Congressman, I want you to listen to what the White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said today about safe havens for Syrian civilians. In Syrian civilians, that's one of the president's top foreign policy priorities. We don't have the clip, but I want your reaction that this is what the Trump administration wants, these so-called safe havens in Syria for refugees so they don't have to be sent out of Syria.
This is something we've talked about for a number of years since this conflict began, and it's simply not as easy as it sounds. Because if you're going to create a safe haven, that means you're going to have the military support in there necessary to keep not just ISIS, but also keep Assad and his Russian allies from attacking these areas. And that means air power. That means a significant commitment of U.S. forces. So it would be great. Obviously, the preference here is to make Syria safe enough so that the Syrians can return to their homes. That's what we want. I think the incoming president underestimates what it's going to take and the commitment of U.S. forces to create those safe havens. And are we prepared to do what we haven't done at this point, which is to go toe-to-toe with Assad's regime and potentially with the Russians who are supporting him? It's going to take more than just saying we're going to draw a line and say, please stay out. It's going to take an enormous commitment of money and military might to make it happen.
Yeah, the president said he wanted a plan to destroy and defeat ISIS within 30 days. It's been 30 days. Supposedly that plan is going to be ready in the coming days. We'll see. Meanwhile, Congressman, a former Guantanamo prison inmate is believed to have carried out an ISIS suicide attack in Mosul on Monday. What can you tell us about that report? We're showing our viewers some pictures of this former Gitmo prisoner. He was captured in 2001, released in 2004, eventually given about £1 million British pounds for what he endured at Gitmo. And now supposedly a couple of years ago he went through Turkey to Syria, joined ISIS, and was engaged in this suicide bombing attack against Iraqi forces in which he was killed. What else can you tell us about this?
Well, I think those are basically the facts. I think the most important thing here are the dates that you mentioned. 2001 was when he was picked up. 2004 was when he was released. And that points to two problems. One, we were not at all careful about who we rounded up and put in there, and nor were we that careful about who we let go. This was a conflict that we had with the British government over, I forget how many. There was some number of inmates there that were British citizens, and they wanted them released. So back in 2004, that was done. A lot of people take that statistic and say, oh my goodness, look at all of the Guantanamo inmates that President Obama released. But all of those that President Obama released were carefully vetted and determined to be not a threat, be releasable. Back in the early part of the Bush administration, it was more chaotic. And look, I understand that. After 9/11, when the Afghan war started, when the Iraq war started, there was a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And I think this particular inmate reflects that chaos and uncertainty, certainly in having let him go the way he was let go when he clearly was still a threat.
Yes, he was. All right, thanks very much, Congressman.